Welcome guys, if you love tentacles then this tutorial is just right for you. If we look at this image created by Roman Bracci, you can see where my inspiration came from, right? He makes amazing art and this is his website as well. But for the tutorial I wanted to simplify it a lot and also make kind of an animation from it. So as you can see, this is the animation and let's jump into Blender. So let's start with editing this cube. The first thing we do is go into edit mode, so top, W, subdivide. Here you can see that we have subdivided it and we're going to delete these two vertices. Then into the top view, 7, go to the wireframe mode while using Z and then select one part and delete it. Now, because we have half, we can use a modifier and we can use the mirror modifier. So now we only have to edit the right part of this and the left will follow. So let's go here and select our faces. So this is the face selection tool. Make sure you select these top two faces, click 2 times on eye, and now we're gonna inset our faces. So around here, then extrude, extrude again, and inset again. Then extrude downwards, and we're gonna select this edge loop with Alt and select, and then Shift, Alt, and select this edge loop as well. Now, extrude this, then I'm gonna right click, so it snaps back into place, but it's still here. So if I move it around, you can see that it's still there. Then S will be scaling it, but that scales is kind of weird, so I'm gonna do Alt S. Okay, so around here, and this seems to work great. So you might think like, okay, what do we do here? Why do we do it like this? Well, if we use a subdivision surface, you can see that now everything is more smooth and we get these suckers here, as they are called. Okay, the tentacle itself, kind of the arm shape, is a little bit square in my opinion, so I'm gonna edit it. So here, I'm gonna move this a bit outwards, and then move all of this upwards a bit. Just keep playing around with them, and yeah, this already seems way better. W, shade smooth, and here we have a quite decent looking, I guess, a section of a tentacle, right? So this cube can be renamed to tentacle, and what we want to do is we want to use an array modifier to make this tentacle longer. So in this case, the vector is gonna be x0, but y is gonna be the 1, alright? And then we can put the count up. The thing is, we need to make sure that in between these sections, that those sections are merged together. So down here in your array modifier, you can see that there is an option merge. Make sure that is on. Now, let's do first a count of 3. Go to the top view, and I am going to duplicate this part here. Okay? This duplicate is going to be our end cap later on. I will explain later what it is, but you can rename it if you want. So here, tentacle and cap. Oh, tentacled, whatever. You know what it is. Now, what we're gonna do is I'm going to apply my mirror modifier, and I will apply my array modifier. The subdivision surface can kinda go off, but let's just keep it for right now so we can kinda see what's happening. Now, we want to select this whole edge loop, and I want to make this whole tentacle kind of the end of the tentacle, right? The pointy shape. So I will use the proportional editing tool, make sure I select this edge loop, and I'm gonna play around with these values, okay? You can see the circle around, and the bigger the circle is, the more vertices will actually follow. And that's just with my scroll wheel, okay? So just use the scroll button. Make sure you don't go too far. You want to do only this little point here, right? So something around here, make it a bit smaller. And this already looks great, but it looks kind of stretched, and I don't want it to stretch too much. So I might want to move this all a little bit down. Just make sure you don't really move this part here, because later on that will be annoying because the end cap and this array modifier are not matching up perfectly then. If you're afraid of messing it up, you can just select this part here and hide it for right now, as well as this. It looks kind of weird. You can probably better do it with the vertex selection. Hide it, and now you can play around with this again. Okay, and make it a bit smaller. So if you're happy with it, you can click on Alt H to unhide this part, and now it's still perfectly where it was. So very cool. The last little thing that we need to change here is make sure that this cap is filled. So let's go here. proportional editing tool can go off, extrude outwards, at center. And here we have, yeah, this little end bit. Awesome. So what are we going to do now? We are going to select our tentacle, and we can put the count up as much as we want, and we can use a caps. Okay, so this is going to be our end cap, and now you can see that we have created, yeah, a tentacle. You can still play around with this count if you want, as you can see, because the end cap will just be always one of them, and in between you can put the count up as much as you want. So it's that easy. What do we do now? Well, we are going to delete the subdivision surface of this part here, and also of this whole array of tentacle objects, and then I'm gonna apply the mirror and the array of the tentacle. Why do I do it like this? You don't really have to, but the cool thing about having this as a real object now is that you can still go in there and you can move everything around, right? So we can maybe make this bottom part, if we want, we can make it a bit bigger, right? So yeah, being able to play around with this is quite cool, especially with these kind of organic models. So let's say this is what we want. Now you can of course get your subdivision surface back. The only reason why we deleted it is because these are two separate parts, and yeah, it kind of sometimes messes it a bit up. Okay, then this top part has a different subdivision than the array that you have underneath. So we are happy with this, but we need to animate it, right? We need to rig it first. So I'm gonna select this whole edge loop here, Shift S and do cursor to selected. Now inside object mode, I will add an armature, and you can see that this is just a little bone. Let's rotate it around the x-axis for 90 degrees here, and I want this end part, so the half of this ball here, to end up at the end of our tentacle, so around here. Perfect. Then you might think, that's a big ass bone. What it is, so we are going to go select the bone, go into edit mode, select the middle part of the bone, and then click on subdivide. Let's do 3 times. So we have, I don't know, in this case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bones in this case. Then what you want to do is you want to still be in edit mode, select the last bone here on top, extrude it here, and then around here. This is going to be our controller bone. Okay, I am not gonna claim that this is the best way to do this, but it's just a very easy, quick and simple way to actually animate these tentacles, right? So what you want to do with this tentacle is you want to click, first select it, click on Alt B, and then clear parent. So why do we want to clear the parent? That is because I want to be able to move it away from a bone without all of these bones, you know, shaping with it, like trying to stay connected. I don't want that. So that is why we cleared the parent there. Now, what we want to do is we want to select this bone, but we want to do this in pose mode. So pose mode, select that bone, go here into bone constraint properties, and then we're going to use an inverse kinematics. Then the target is going to be this whole armature, and the bone is going to be the last bone here. So in this case, this is the bone 008, right? So let's go back to this bone 008. Of course, I should have renamed these like controller bone, but yeah, I'm just lazy. So the chain length is the length here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can put it to 7 or 8. Let's do 7 first so you can see what's going to happen. And the cool thing about this right now is if I move this controller bone, you can see that the rest follows as we say. Except the last one because, wait, hold on, let me move this. Except the last one because this bone here is not in our chain. Right, so if I put this to 8, you can see that that also moves with it. So you can put the chain length higher or lower. In this case, I'll just do 8. Yeah, and that kind of works great. Just make sure you use the controller bone, and here is everything. But there's one problem: the tentacle is not moving with it. So let's first clear the positions of this pose mode. So select this bone, then click on Alt R to get clear of the rotation. Alt G for the location, and Alt S for the scale. It's that easy. Now, go back into object mode, select your tentacle, then the armature, Ctrl P, and then we're gonna do armature deform with automatic weights, okay? So now if you go back to pose mode and we move this around, you can see that our tentacle just moved with it. Perfect. So this is tentacle 1. And now let's create the scene. And the first thing that I want to do is put my camera in position. And with the camera, well, if you just click on 0, you are in your camera view, of course. And I already want to think about what I want to achieve with this camera. You know, where do I want to make everything look big? Do I want to make everything look impressive? Do I want to look down on something? And also, where do I want to put this image or animation on eventually? Because if you are putting it on YouTube, you might have a screen like this, right? Like this resolution, the 1920 by 1080. It is a normal resolution for computers, also if you have your phone on the side. But if you are doing it for Instagram or TikTok purposes, you might not want to have this resolution because it just doesn't look as good in your feed, or you have to turn around your phone, which a lot of people don't, especially at these kinds of apps, let's say. So then you might think maybe we'll do another resolution. So in this case, I also thought that. And you could do 1920 by 1920 or 1080 by 1080 to make it more square. Okay, so now we can start to think about where to put our camera. So you can move your camera around, of course, with this view option here and use camera to view. So now if you're in your camera view, you can just move your camera like this. But you can also just go to the front view. So let's say I go click on 1, do view, then align view, and then align active camera to view. So now the active camera is kind of aligned. But now if you select your camera, you can see that it's still not really in place. You can do 0, 0, 0, and now it's perfectly in the middle, let's say. So I personally like to use multiple of these techniques. I like to kind of put it in the middle in this case because it just works with this kind of animation, and just move around with this location transform tools underneath the item. But yeah, that's all up to you, of course. We do need a nice plane underneath here, which is going to be our floor, and we need some kind of background, right? So I will just duplicate it twice, and we can of course rename this. So this is going to be the floor, and this is going to be the background. So what do I want to achieve with this? I want to make sure that the background and the floor are both filling the whole scene. So I might put this down here, scale this up for sure. This one also has to be a bit bigger, but I can also just move my camera a little bit, right? So something like this. Then what is going to happen here? Well, we need to move everything around, right? We have kind of the basics of our scene and our studio, but it's not really there yet. So let's actually delete this part here. We don't need it anymore. And we can, of course, move our tentacle around. So if you just select your tentacle armature, you can just move it around and see where everything has to go. So I might scale it a bit down here. And then, move it somewhere here. And it is just all playing around with what we have, right? So now I can still play around with my camera if I would like to. So we want more of these tentacles. So if you want to select or duplicate one, you select the bone and the tentacle mesh. Then duplicate it. Let's do 4 of them. And now you can just select these whole tentacles, let's say. So I can just move this one here if I would like to. This one in the back a bit, and this one here. Doesn't really matter, whatever looks cool. Of course, in my end scene, I played a lot around with this, but we have to do a tutorial, so I can't play too long with this, of course. But this is kind of how we did it. Then, what do we want more in the scene? Well, I would like some extra things like maybe stones. So I literally just did some UV sphere, so mesh UV sphere. Make sure you do shade smooth. And just put them down. Alright? So I did one big one here in front. But just do whatever looks cool to you. Then we have a smaller one here. Maybe one here in the back. Just make sure everything is in the scene. And it's not touching these tentacles too much. It's actually like not going inside of each other, right? That seems a bit unrealistic. So yeah, play a bit around with those options. That already looks better. Then I made some extra smaller balls, which are a different color. So something here. here in the back, whatever. Let's make sure you see it from the camera. And maybe one here in front. So now that we kind of have our scene together a little bit, I want to start and add some materials. Because, yeah, looks all cool, but we can't really see what is happening here, right? So let's go here into our shading. And then we want to start to shade some of our models, right? So we're just going to start very, very, very simple. Let's start with a tentacle. So we have a tentacle, and it's going to be tentacle. Let's do gold. So let's make a nice gold one of this, somewhere around here. Make sure it's metallic. Something like this. And you can, of course, play around with the roughness. I think this looks kind of cool, so I'm going to keep it at this. Then I'm going to duplicate this, and this is going to be, let's do a matte color, so matte. And instead of it being gold, we're going to do this non-gold, and this already looks more matte. I might want to put it a little bit brighter. So a little bit more here, but that looks quite cool. So these two are going to be the matte color, and these two are going to be the gold color. You can always go in there and change it again, but that's kind of the gist of it. Then for this floor, I'm going to do a very simple material. It's just going to be very black, so quite dark. Maybe a little bit towards the blue here. Specular is good, but maybe the roughness can go to 0.15. That already looks better. Let's create the material for the background. I'm going to select the background, and we're going to create a new material and just rename it to background. I want this background to be a little bit more interesting than just a singular color. So I'm going to delete the principal shader, and I'm going to add a diffuse and an emission. These I'm going to mix with a mix shader. And let's combine them. So, what colors do we want? Well, let's go for a darker blue, maybe even towards the greenish, like really an ocean color. And then this one is going to be a nice blue. We can do it quite light. And at this point, these two are getting mixed, right? We just have this darker color mixed with this emission brighter color. That's not really what we want, so I'm going to use a gradient texture. And I'm going to put the fuck into the fact of the mix shader. Right now it's linear, as you can see. It goes from this color to this color. And I want it to be spherical. The problem is, as you can see, the sphere is not in the middle, right? It's one of the corners. So with a texture coordinate and a mapping node, we can move this around. So let's put the UV into the vector. And the vector into the gradient texture. Okay, so now we're gonna move this location around, and it seems to be that minus 0.15 and minus 0.15 works in this case. It is in the middle, but because it is so big, we cannot really see this darker color. How do we change this? Very simple. You can edit this gradient texture with a color ramp. And now if I change this ramp, you can see that we get this circle coming up here. And instead of linear, I like to do B-spline to make it a bit more smooth, as you can see here. So yeah, something like this might work. You can still play around with these colors, of course. That's all up to you, but this is kind of how I did this. And that is the background. Thanks for checking out this video. Click on part 2 to continue this tutorial. And I would love if you like, subscribe, and all that stuff, but that is all up to you. I see you guys in the next one.